It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Nancy Blaney and Claire Coughlin from the Animal Welfare Institute. It was about 7 or 8 months ago that we had our first Zoom to talk about this. And one of the things, when we went to the OVC TTA conference last year, I'm going to see if I can come up with some more acronyms. We talked about this with Victoria Jollicure about the resources that the Animal Welfare Institute provides. And there's so much that I didn't know and so much that you don't know about the unbelievably amazing work that this organization does every single day. You heard Mike Arms reference animal welfare work, so they are kindred spirits now, right? But it is my pleasure to turn this over to Nancy Blaney and Claire Coughlin.
Oh God, I'm so bad at these. Thank you very much. I was going to say already, I'm not sure if I can do this correctly, but okay, let's see. Here we go. There it is. So here's some information. We'll put our contact information up again at the end. If anyone has trouble hearing me throughout because I can speak softly, please flag me down, let me know. But I'm Claire Coughlin. I'm the director of the Companion Animal Program for the Animal Welfare Institute and oversee our work on the relationship between domestic violence or interpersonal violence and animal cruelty. And I'll let Nancy introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Nancy Blaney, so the other person, and I'm Director of Government Affairs for Animal Welfare Institute. I have been there for more years than I'm going to divulge to any of you. Claire and I work together to affect change in policy. And of course, our companion animal program just has a wealth of resources that are available to you now, to use now. And then we work together to try to get policy changes that will make more resources available to you all at some point in the near future. But we are happy to say, and we will hear more about it, that we had an instrumental role in getting the PAWS program into law. So very happy about that.
Great. And yes, so I know I think the program, it mentions cross-reporting and resource mapping, which we will be talking about. But generally speaking, what we're here to talk about is policy and practice initiatives that are aimed at addressing this link. So we're going to take a look at some specific policies and practice resources. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of this because we're in an audience where this is not new information, but because you guys will have the slides and because it is important information, I always like to. Oh, okay. I thought it was me. All right. So I always like to include just some of the basic information on what we know about the connection between interpersonal violence and animal cruelty. Again, it's already been said once today, but we know that 2/3 of U.S. households have pets, and we know that that number actually goes up for homes that are domestically violent, and there are a number of reasons for that. And then, as you all know already, that survivors are far less likely to leave when there is a chance they have to leave their animals behind, and the vast majority of survivors have reported that their abusers have also harmed, threatened, and killed pets. So a few other things here, we're gonna skip right through this, with the exception of that bottom piece too. I just wanna point out that we also know there is a severity link, which doesn't get talked about quite as much, but there is a lot of research around this as well that shows that those survivors who have abusers who are harming and threatening animals are also experiencing their own abuse at a higher rate and at more severe levels. So there are a number of studies that demonstrate that as well, that having pet abuse present escalates the violence in an interpersonal relationship as well. For many of you here, I would imagine you work quite a lot with children as well. This is something I did just last week, give a presentation on child abuse and animal abuse in and of itself. So this can be its own presentation. There's a wealth of information that we have about how these domestically violent homes impact children, impact animals, and how the likelihood of child abuse goes up when there is animal abuse known in the home. It's a little harder with animal cruelty and elder abuse. Can I get an idea of, does anyone here specifically work with older adults? I would imagine most of you encounter older adults, but maybe not a specialty group. Okay, excellent. So this is something we need more research on. I say this over and over and over again because there's not a ton of empirical evidence, but there is a wealth of anecdotal and qualitative work that shows us that there is this link between animal cruelty and elder abuse as well, or abuse in later life. One thing to note here is we know people and their pets have an incredibly strong bond, but there's also reason to believe that that bond may be that much more important or that much more strong for older adults who have diminished support networks and who are living perhaps a more isolated life, and so that bond increases and can be manipulated. So again, you know most of that already, but what we're here to talk about today is the policy and practice responses to help us address this link in our work. So we're going to start a few of the things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the PAWS Act. Obviously, you are quite familiar with the program, but we're going to talk about some of the less familiar pieces that are a part of that law as well. Talking about our Safe Havens for Pets program and our National Directory of Resources, safety planning tools for survivors with pets, incorporating pets in orders of protection, designating animal abuse as a form of domestic violence, and then we're going to talk about cross-reporting and cross-training as well. So I will pass it to Nancy to talk a little bit about the PAWS Act.
All right, most of you are, obviously all of you, are familiar with the main part of the what started life as the Pet and Women's Safety Act. For some reason, they felt the need to change it when they added it to the Farm Bill. So it is now the Protecting Animals with Shelter grant program. Truly the most important federal law right now with regard to the work that you do protecting domestic violence survivors and their companion animals. The grant program is essential to that work. It's making money available that just had not been available before. It has generated and sparked a lot of other programs. Red Rover, of course, it has a tremendous program in this area too. So all of this has really raised awareness about how important this connection is, how important it is to provide these services, and how important it is to provide the resources so that these services can be provided. And for anybody who didn't know, the law does cover horses. So if you know of anyone, or perhaps you are a facility that does provide care for horses, but it is also something that is available to those who have horse rescues. So something to think about if you know anybody who does that work who may not be aware of this. It's just one of those anomalies in the law. Anybody been asked to help care for a horse? Ah, yeah, there we go. Okay.
Noah's did. That's
No, okay. It does happen, and it happens quite a lot. As a matter of fact, the very first pet protection order law, the first law in Maine, specifically allowing pets to be included on protection orders, involved farm animals. It did not involve companion animals. It was an individual who was concerned about leaving because she knew that her husband would kill the horses and the sheep that they had on their property. So, not such an odd inclusion after all. Now there's a couple of things that I do want everyone to be aware of that they may not be, so that the grants, as with here, can cover training. So if that's not something that's in your program, but you wanted to include it, training can also be provided in addition to actual direct services to the individuals. Restitution for veterinary medical expenses can also be covered. And one of the things that I find most people are not familiar with is the change in federal law with regard to stalking and interstate harassment. So now it is a federal crime to harass or stalk victims with the idea of harming or threatening to harm their companion animals. So that is a huge thing that just really is not as well known. Now a criminal penalty for traveling across state lines for the purpose of harming a pet covered by a protection order. Important to know that, and that's why it's so important that your clients be aware that your pets can be covered by protection orders. Depending on your state, there may be a specific allowance for that. There may be specific statutory language that says pets may be covered. We're bordering on 42 states. We're waiting for the Georgia law to be signed that will do that. Pennsylvania just last year had theirs signed, becoming 41. So, very few states now that don't. But if you happen to be in a state where there is not a specific law, this is where pets' status as property actually can work to their benefit, because like any other property, they could be included on a protection order. So it's a little more roundabout, but it is possible. And I'm going to turn this back over to Claire to talk about our fabulous Safe Havens our directory and our website and all that stuff.
Okay, so this is we're going to just do a quick overview of our Safe Havens for Pets program. So this is our national directory of pet sheltering resources for survivors. So you all should be on this, and if you aren't, please let me know, but we have cross-checked with the grantee list a million times. So all of your organizations should be listed here. But when we talk about safe havens, it means a little something different to every community. But for us, what we're talking about is not only DV shelters that are pet friendly in a traditional sense in that they offer co-housing, which is wonderful, but for communities where that is not an option or not yet available, we also have all sorts of type of programs. Vets offices that will do free boarding for survivors, pets, boarding facilities, foster coalitions, animal welfare organizations. So this is, here we go. This is just a peek at, this is a density map, not an actual, because we can't fit them all on there. But this is just a look at where those resources are throughout the country, and a quick look at our database, which I failed to update the picture of because we just upgraded it in the last month. So it looks slightly different, but gives you a good idea. So it is searchable by state, searchable by zip code, and it is now also searchable by, you can either filter by resources for survivors specifically, or you can search specifically for resources for people who are experiencing homelessness with a pet, with or without that DV component as well. So that is the new feature that's on there now. And then each of these listings, they are updated every year. We talk and do at length conversations with each and every group before they're included here. And you'll see that the program details that we'll include, they're designed to be for people in crisis, for their advocates to be able to take at a glance, look at the resources in their area and see what is a good fit for them. So you did a great job introducing this. One of those things is non-traditional companion animals, because we do get a lot of requests for that. We have a lot of survivors coming in with animals other than cats and dogs. So you'll see that you can see ones that have farm animal options available, ones that have horse animal options available. And then we'll also show restrictions as well. Is this something that is restricted to county or state residents, et cetera? And then information on the model of the safe haven. So is it a shelter where people and pets get to stay together, or is it a foster coalition, or perhaps a humane society that has volunteered their sheltering space, things like that. So Yes, please feel free to take a look. And if anyone is ever concerned about their information or needs to update it, please reach out. But typically, either myself or my right-hand person, Val, we talk to each and every group ourselves and update them annually. Oh, okay, this is just fun. So these are some non-pause grantees that I wanted to highlight, because it's always fun to look at different ways that people do this work. And as I mentioned before, the models vary drastically from one community to another, and what is needed in one community is different than what is needed in another. So this is one of our favorites, Pigtopia. It's always a hit. Pigtopia is in Tennessee, and this is something that was founded in memory of a survivor. So the individual who opened this, her friend was unfortunately murdered or lost her life to her abuser, but she had 8 companion pigs, and she was a lover of pigs. And so this was something that was created in that individual, Amber's, memory. And this is a pig-specific rescue where they will do, I say foster, but it's really, she shelters the pigs of survivors throughout Tennessee and has taken those from other states as well. They will do spay and neutering, they do vet services, they will help with locating pig-friendly transitional living and with doing deposits, so anything that is needed in association with moving into safe housing with your companion pig. Yes, isn't it? Yes. And again, it's oddly specific, right? But there's a demand for it. There's a need. And this is a well-used service because there is that need. And it's wonderful. They do great work. So always happy to promote them. This is, this one I included specifically because it's one I work with. I'm based in Missouri. So this is the Animal Protection Association of Missouri, and it was actually the first DV safe haven related program in the state of Missouri, and has been around for about 30 years now. They opened this safe haven program, and this is primarily shelter and foster based, but again, is done in cooperation with DV agencies where we can either have them kenneled or put them through foster. Again, vetting, things like that, all included and all taken care of. One of the unique things about this program that I like to point out is that the other thing that they have done, because they found survivors having trouble getting their animals into that next step in transitional housing or when they're looking into rental housing, part of what they have done with their funding is they've created a pool of funding that they use to help survivors get their animals certified as service animals when appropriate, or ESAs if that's something that is needed, and will help them get them into housing. And they will walk through and pay for that process for survivors, so that it's, one thing to help remove a bit of a barrier. And then they have, they also do a lot of work with sex trafficking survivors as well, and organizations that focus on human trafficking and sex trafficking specifically. So again, I could do spotlights all day because it's amazing the way that people have found to fill the need in their community. There are so many different ways to do this work, and so it's really lovely, just like going through your posters out there. It's amazing to see how many different ways that people have come up with to help solve this problem and to, serve survivors. Okay, this is still me. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about safety planning. So any of the tools we talk about, this one in particular, there's a QR code at the end that'll take you to a page where you can download and view anything. But this is our safety planning tool for survivors. It's something that, all of our resources, they are always free. They are always available. Please take it, throw your logo on it if you want to, use it. We try and make it easy. We don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel if they don't need to. So if there are any of our tools that would be useful for you, please use them and make them your own. But this is a safety planning tool with considerations specific to survivors with pets. One of the things I'll point out that comes up a lot is the establishing a paper trail and different ways to potentially do that. A trail of ownership, making sure vet records are moved into a survivor's names, rabies tags are registered with a survivor's name, microchip, that's a huge one, is making sure a microchip is updated so that the abuser's contact information is no longer on that, so that if that pet does get loose, that whatever humane society someone brings it to and has them scanned, that they aren't reaching out to an abuser about this animal. So making sure that the microchipping information is up to date as soon as someone has kind of left a dangerous situation. A few things, and what I'll mention here is this is kind of specific to survivors, but also applies to those who are fostering pets of survivors. So can be really useful in that sense. And so we have we have a tool that mirrors this that is specific to fostering. But safety considerations once survivors are out of that dangerous environment. One of the big ones is public dog parks. Dog bars are a big thing right now. These are not the animals, especially if you're fostering, these aren't the animals who are going to be on social media. We want to do whatever we can to keep people and the pets safe, and this is unfortunately one more way an abuser can potentially track down a survivor when organizations or fosters potentially are posting information about that animal and can be tracked to a specific group. Nancy mentioned this earlier, but as she said, 41, almost 42. It is on the governor's desk awaiting signature and has been for several weeks in Georgia. Will be 42 states have these laws to allow for the inclusion of pets in orders of protection. So if you can, I know it's a little bit small, but the ones in blue are the dark ones are the ones that do not have that law currently. But because, again, we try and put as many tools in place to make these things simple. Here we go. A couple things that are often included in pet protection orders, they do vary quite significantly from one state to another, but many of them will allow for like awarding custody or possession, allow for law enforcement assistance in retrieving an animal. That's a really big one, especially because we know how dangerous it is for a survivor to go back to retrieve that pet. So a lot of these orders will allow for that assistance as well. And then this is something that's available on our website, just again, something to make things as easy as possible. We have for every state that has some sort of law for inclusion of pets in orders of protection, we have step-by-step guides for how to do that in your state. It's designed with people in crisis in mind to make it as straightforward and as easy as possible. So if a survivor needs to get this into place, or if an advocate is working with them and needs to get that into place, it'll have your state's paperwork and it will show you exactly down to like the bullet point and the checkbox what you need to do to quickly and easily get a pet included in an order of protection in your state. So those are available for use as well. I will probably let Nancy take this because we're about to move into a little bit about like the usage of pet protection orders next.
Okay, and
You touched on this part as well already,
I've got way ahead of myself. But just also for you all, because this may be a little, beyond the services you provide, but you're working with your clients who may have lawyers and advocates with whom they are working. The thing that you now know that they may not know is about the protection orders. And depending on your state and the availability of the manuals, but we are finding that attorneys, like so many other professions, they know about the link, but they don't do anything about it. So they're not asking questions. Social service workers are not asking questions. They know about the link, but they're not asking questions. Lawyers know about the link, but they're not asking questions. So if somebody's coming in to talk about a divorce or leaving or something like that, they're not asking questions about animals in the family. They're not asking questions about, are there concerns about the pet safety? So now that you know about these available resources, that's something that you can just kind of tease with your client to make sure that she is asking whatever attorney that she may be working with about this, so that all of the protections that she has available to her, she's able to take advantage of. So yeah, this is really kind of talking about, again, pets as property and that working to their advantage. And the way that pets on protection orders works, it often it'll vary from state to state, as Claire has said. Sometimes it's just a clear pets can be included. Sometimes it's because abuse of pets is included in the domestic violence definition, so that it's actually an element of domestic violence, and therefore the pet can be included because they're getting protection from abuse order. So there's all different kinds of ways that pets can be included. We found that it's very hard getting data on the usage of pet protection orders. We're hoping that we might be able to foster some research, more research into this. But I found these little bits of data that I did find really interesting. As you see in Minnesota, the 500% increase in including pets on orders once there was specific language for that. In New York, similarly, numbers went way up when they started specifically being allowed to include pets on protection orders. So we know that the concern is there. We know the interest is there. We know that people want to take advantage of as many tools as they can to protect themselves and their companion animals. Well, you can borrow that one. As I mentioned, designating animal abuse as a component of domestic violence is a tool that some states have used. Enhanced penalties. Where we see enhanced penalties most is when children are exposed to animal abuse. So there are a few states where if you expose a child to animal abuse, if you involve the child in the abuse of the animal, then the penalty goes up for that abuse. Custody considerations. We do have a listing of some court cases where custody of the child was in question, and it came up that there was animal abuse in the family. In some cases, there were accusations of abuse, but not actually nothing was adjudicated, but the judge still took that into consideration and scaled back or denied the abusing parent custody, and in some cases even visitation of the child because of that. Cross-reporting laws. Let's see, do we talk about that a little bit more? We're getting into that. Oh, here's a little bit more. Okay, a little bit more on designating animal abuse as a form of DV. And will everybody be getting the slides? You say so. Everybody gets the slides. Absolutely. So in Nevada, where we happen to be, harming an animal to harass a spouse or partner is considered domestic violence and can in and of itself be grounds for a domestic violence protection order. So it doesn't have to be a request to include the pet necessarily, but the abuse can be the grounds for the order. So we just want to make sure that when petitioning for an order of protection, survivors include incidents of animal abuse as a incident of domestic violence. This is a particular case that was in Washington State in 2022. The Supreme Court unanimously confirmed that animal abuse constitutes domestic violence. So in some cases, I'm happy to say the courts are taking notice of this. As many of you have probably found out yourselves, courts are a little slow in getting wise to this. Courts have been very slow in just recognizing animal abuse as a crime of violence in and of itself, much less its relationship to domestic violence and child abuse and elder abuse. So always glad to see when a court, especially the Supreme Court in Washington, did likewise. Oregon is also another state where they have been very on top of animal abuse as a crime of violence in and of itself. Again, the enhanced penalties. I'm sure that all of you have encountered cases where children have been forced to observe the abuse, where children have been forced to participate in the abuse. In two particular cases, I know children were forced to actually engage in the actual physical abuse of the animal, and in another case, they were told they were not allowed to feed their pet. So the pet was kept locked in a basement, and the children were told they were not allowed to feed the pet. In that case, that is where enhanced penalties can come into play. Here are the states where different forms of enhanced penalties are already in law. Sometimes it involves animal abuse, sometimes it involves animal fighting, which is, as you all know, kind of a separate thing. And in some places, that is not considered animal abuse. But fortunately, it is against the law everywhere. Custody considerations, again, where animal cruelty is treated as child abuse or endangerment, when the child is forced to observe it, when it is being used as a way to enforce the child's compliance, particularly in sexual abuse of children. That is where the child will be told, if you tell anybody about this, I'm going to harm your pet. I'm going to, you will get rid of the dog. You'll come home and your dog won't be here anymore. So that is often used as a tool of coercion in child sexual abuse. Caden's Law was a new law in Pennsylvania. That strengthens the current factors that judges must consider in making custody and visitation decisions. So they actually passed a law to require this of judges, not just to make it kind of an option on the judge's part. In this particular case, a young girl was killed by her father. He had a history of child abuse, and nobody took that into consideration. Cross-reporting. Cross-reporting is getting to be kind of one of our priority issues. We just got a new law about cross-reporting in Ohio, worked very hard to get that there, to get more buy-in from all of the stakeholders in this area, because as you can imagine, there is resistance to that, and we understand why. Okay, this is something else I have to worry about. As a social service provider, as a veterinarian, as a law enforcement officer, something else I have to look at, something else I have to worry about. So we did training ahead of time as we were pursuing the law to get buy-in, to increase the awareness of why this was so important. So states are enacting laws to require various levels of cross-reporting, and this just kind of widens the tent. We have more people looking out for more animals and more people looking out for everybody's best interests. And do I have that in Connecticut? I think I do. We do have a listing of, right at the moment, all of the different cross-reporting laws and what states require what kind of reporting. Yes. Yes, good point. And I'm just looking. We do have some cross-reporting laws with regard to elder abuse. Again, as Claire pointed out, this is more of a growing area of awareness that there is a connection between elder abuse and animal abuse. It can manifest itself differently. Just looking to see. I know that there was, Connecticut has a very strong law on cross-reporting and how many new cases. Do I have that in here? I'm getting ahead of myself again. There we go. Okay. I just love to point out the Connecticut example here because it really demonstrates the value of cross-reporting when they get reports from animal control to the Child Welfare Agency. They then kind of do their own cross-checking, and as you can see, they got 87 suspicions of child maltreatment from animal control officers. 38 of them were known to the Department of Children and Families. 8 resulted in new investigations. So these were 8 cases they did not know about before. And that's important. If it's even only one out of that many, that's one more situation that has been caught, hopefully, before things really get out of hand. So this is more information about the Connecticut cases and just how the agencies dealt with those instances. As you can see, the Department of Children and Families learned that dogs had been hanged in front of children, so they were really subjected to some very awful animal abuse as a way of coercion against the children. And let's see. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Claire for more on for now coordinated community response teams. There we go.
Great, and I just wanted to touch on this ever so briefly. Again, something that looks very different from one community to the next, but is a highly effective way to do this work, especially when it comes to cross-reporting. One thing I will say is you don't have to have a law to do that either. So again, I am in Missouri, and I don't know, do we have someone from Hope House here, I assume? Okay, great. Yes, I think we've been on have been on some calls together because, again, this law has not yet passed in Missouri. We've tried, I think this is year 4, and it's getting farther than ever before, but we have till Friday. It's not looking great, but we, because we don't need the law to do this work, we know how important it is. We have a Child and Animal Abuse and Neglect Coalition that is informal, that is not mandated, and I know we've had some Hope House representatives join on that call as well, and it is just child and animal welfare workers from throughout the state of Missouri. We do them in regional groups as well, and just an opportunity to talk with one another, to address cases that are happening in our community and get advice. We've had it really serve a lot of people quite well. We've had instances where a kid came in for a forensic interview and disclosed that he was afraid that the child, or that his dad was going to be at home killing the dogs because his dad had already killed the dogs in the past, and now that this child had been removed, he was afraid that they were going to kill the dog, as a form of punishment. And so with this informal coalition, we were able to, they shot an email and figured out, okay, who needs to do what. We got a prosecutor that's on our group, was able to get a search warrant and get animal control over there and get into the home and get the dogs. So there are lots of ways to collaborate when you do not necessarily have the mandates in your community. I think the most important part is communicating with people in your communities. Communicating with people in your community sounds ridiculous, but and working with one another. So does anyone here participate in somewhat similar organization? Zach? Okay, great. And I know a number of groups, can think of one animal control group I've worked with that specifically was encountering DV so often in the home that they now have regular regional meetings with their DV agencies because they're so often having to refer them. And it's something that serves both the people and the pets really well by being able to be a part of these multidisciplinary teams. And again, a lot of these coalitions, and I think Bryn maybe talked about this last time I was with her, a lot of these coalitions already exist in your community, so you don't always have to start a new one. You just need to get a seat at the table. So figuring that, what are the groups in your community that are doing this work, and how do you get in with those groups? And thinking creatively. Again, we don't often see animal welfare reps in these MDTs, especially when it comes to behavioral health and social services, but they should be, and we all know why. So thinking creatively about who you invite to your coalition meetings as well, because it ultimately serves us all well. Let's see. Oh, this is just one of my favorite. Okay, so this is, I could talk about this forever because this is like one of my soapbox issues. But I very, very firmly believe we cannot mandate that people do things and then not give them the tools and the resources to actually do them. And that is one thing I will say, is that a lot of the cross-reporting laws do not have great training components included, and that is problematic, right? Because we're asking social services professionals to recognize and report animal abuse. We're asking animal control to recognize and report child abuse or DV or elder abuse. We need to give them the tools to do that. They don't have to be experts. We don't all have to be experts. We just need to know the flags, the red flags. What do we look for? And most importantly, when we see those red flags, what in the world do we do with them? How do we get them to the experts? So that being said, this is just a small example, but
Which you gave us, and they are on litmus.
Okay,
Yes,
fabulous.
last year. So
Did I? Okay.
Yes.
I was gonna say, Yes. Okay, so all of our tools are available on our website in at least English and Spanish, but can be translated into any other language very easily as well. So you can always just reach out to me, let me know if you need it in a specific language for your community, for your organization. We're happy to do that. Again, as I said, please take them, use them, put your logo on them, make them your own. We just want them available to people who might need them. So our safety planning tool, a couple of other cross-training tools that we have. So we have specifically for animal control or animal welfare, humane law enforcement, we have screening tools for recognizing signs of child abuse and signs of elder abuse or DV. These are not exhaustive lists and tools. They're just designed, again, to help them know what to look for, as far as the things that are often encountered in their day-to-day work. There are certain signs that they're more likely to encounter than others. And then advice on what to do when you do encounter that. For those of you who are working with kids in your facilities and with your organizations, we have, for human services personnel, we have these tools that are all evidence-based tools for talking to children about pets and pet abuse, and then screening for symptoms related to witnessing of pet abuse and referring for services. So those are all available as well, and can, again, just be a great guide for having some of those very complicated conversations about animals and animal abuse with children who have experienced trauma. And then, let's see, and then we also have one specifically for social services providers that is, again, designed for someone who is not an animal welfare expert to recognize signs of animal abuse and neglect, and to know what to do when they encounter them. And we offer some state-specific advice as well based on cross-reporting laws. So please feel free, access and use any resources that you want. And please do let me know if there are other languages that you guys need those in. We just want to make it as easy as possible. I know, I think we're almost out of time. This I just wanted to put up because this is where our Safe Havens for Pets directory is located that we talked about earlier. But on here, we have a number of other resources. I will specifically point out funding because, as you mentioned earlier, grants end, and we know that. And that is why we are constantly in contact with the groups we work with, because we know programs change because funding changes. So for those of you who are looking for alternative funding resources, we have a whole page of funding resources. Greater Goods is on there, Red Rover is on there, any number of other opportunities for funding around this work. We have resources on the pets and protection orders, and then a number of other tools that are designed specifically for advocates. So please, feel free to check that out if there are any resources that you need as well. And if there's something you don't see on there that you need, you're also welcome to tell us, because we're constantly working on developing new tools. So if there is something you don't see, please let me know, and it might be something we're already working on, and if not, I love having a good new idea. So I think that's what we've got. Oh, yes, I just brought some of our, I'll leave them somewhere, Safe Havens for Pets flyers that have information about the directory and resources for people experiencing homelessness or domestic violence. Delightful. Fabulous. Yeah, does anyone have questions, or was there anything you wanted to add?
Just one thing to add, and again, being cognizant and aware of the idea of, oh boy, something else for me to have to do, particularly with regard to cross-reporting and the community response teams. I think all of that kind of goes to what we heard this morning about picking people up out of the river, but instead going upstream to find out why they're going in the first place. That's what the coordinated community response teams are really about, is catching them before they get in the river, having the community all talking to one another, seeing problems perhaps before they escalate into something else. And it's like, we're concerned about this particular family because we're seeing this, and who do we need to bring in so that we can kind of nip things in the bud. So it's really about trying to catch them before they're in the river, rather than creating more work for people who are already overworked, but hopefully, staving off problems that might be coming in the future. Also with the cross-reporting is just having more eyes on what's going on. And again, as Claire pointed out, nobody has to be an expert in everything. It's just being aware. One of the resources we also have, for those of you who are working with veterinarians or are having trouble finding veterinarians to work with, we have posters for veterinarians, because I was shocked when I was in touch with veterinarians as we began this program many, many years ago, that they really, I don't know what abuse looks like. Are you serious? Really? You can't tell what's abusive and what's not? So we developed a poster that just has kind of the questions for them, like, oh, that was a terrible accident, or was it? And the questions to ask, for them to ask, and again, they don't even have to be an expert in abuse. They just have to think, this is not what I learned in vet school happens when what the story they're telling me is the actual story, and whom they should contact when they have that concern. So just another resource that's on our website as well. So questions?
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't say that I've seen it in legal documents, but yes, that I've had reports of that, because again, if a survivor has left a dangerous situation, they have gotten, they've switched that microchip information, they've switched their vet records, and they have gotten that pet included in an order of protection, that yes, even if it doesn't allow specifically, it doesn't mandate custody, that can be used as evidence to fuel a custody decision. Sure. Yeah. That's a great question. But I will say, I think in my experience, most of the statutes do have and I have a checklist somewhere about this for which states have what, but do have some provision in those orders of protection that either allow for custody or possession, whatever the term that state uses. And then
For the term of that protection order, custody is sort of assumed to that person, but if they're going down the road of, let's say, divorce.
exactly,
Then that could be.
then that is used as evidence. Yes. Yeah, I have seen that used as evidence. Yeah. Anybody else?
Anything that you said, I really need, that I didn't see you offering?
Also, please feel free to reach out. The other thing I'll say is we're always happy to do like free webinars, trainings, if you need trainings for staff, board members, volunteers. We've done a lot of volunteer trainings for DV shelter staff who are encountering, either fostering or encountering animals in their organization. So if there's ever anything we can provide along those lines, please feel free to reach out and let us know.
Now, I'm happy to say if anybody's from Ohio, oh, good. I'm happy to say that with our new cross-reporting law, we have actually had
Oh, yes.
the Ohio, Police Officers Training Academy has asked us to do training on the cross-reporting law. They've asked us to do it. I mean,
They're consistently
It is shocking. So we will be doing training. We've got, I think, about 7 regional OPATA trainings already set up, along with a former detective who's working with our representative in Ohio to do these trainings. But, I mean, you could have knocked us over with a feather when it's like, they really want us to do it. It's like, huh? It's usually, you have to, just beat them over the head with a stick, like, you need to have this training. No, they really want it. They are excited about it. So just something really positive to report.
It's really good evidence of all you need is a couple of good contacts, people who have buy-in. It makes a world of difference, and is another good reason to connect with these other groups in your community, even if they're only tangentially related to you, is because that is how you find your people. That is how you find your people who have aligned visions and aligned missions, even if they on paper look a little bit different. You can find those people and get that buy-in, and it makes your work a hell of a lot pardon my language, a lot easier when you've got all of these other communities and organizations helping you, and when you don't have to reinvent the wheel with each and everything you do. So. That is a really great question. We have some like outreach language we've designed around that, and have done just some basic outreach with like prosecutors' offices, and we've talked about it with some like prosecutor conferences, etc. But it's definitely something we need to do more of. I think that's a really great suggestion, is because I do think we're seeing it a little bit more well known. But it is still unfortunate that a lot of people don't know it's available in their states. And I think probably with advocates in those states as well, because a lot of like court-related advocates, I think, would be a really good target. That's great. And it wasn't familiar. That is not a surprise.
Whatever you got, we will plagiarize.
No, that's a great point. And similarly, if you're thinking of doing anything in that, you're welcome to use what we've put together as well. And I'm happy to send that to you. Yes.
We have benchmarks for judges.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, and doesn't New Mexico also have a bench card? Yes, I thought so. Um, Great, yes. Sure. That's a really great question, and we're okay. No, so that's a great question. I wish I had a better answer, but what I will say is, I am seeing that with some of these safe havens that are listed. Again, I won't call anybody out, even though I know this is a friendly room, but that they have kind of taken on the project of kind of working with those clients and the people in their community that they're afraid that that is an issue, and making themselves a resource for that, even if they have to do it somewhat quietly for the safety of the clients and for the safety of the community members, and not wanting to put people in a position where they're endangering themselves. So we're seeing that pop up to fill, because it's absolutely, it's a need, it's a fear, and these groups have the resources, especially those that are run through animal welfare agencies. They have these programs for survivors. They have these programs for people who are experiencing homelessness, and we're seeing that they see that need in their community. And I have actually met with several who have kind of come up with ways to tackle this in their community and to make themselves available for that, because it's a really big concern. But I don't know of any like model examples per se, but I think that it is something I'm hearing a lot of conversations around, and seeing people willing to jump in and do the work because it's a need. And I think that's the beauty of the nonprofit world and helping professions in general, right? A lot of these things start out as, well, we didn't plan to do it, but it turns out there's a need for this, and it's coming to my door, and people find a way to fill the gap. So, I think as long as we keep having those conversations and sharing information, my hope is we'll see that, improve. But no, thank you for bringing it up, because I know it's a hard thing to bring up, and it's a very real concern and fear right now for a lot of people. So, and there are a couple of organizations that I'm aware of that are kind of having to, thank you, pivot their work a tiny bit, because they have been focusing on helping with people coming over the border and doing temporary care of animals and then reunifying them. So I'm not really sure in what ways they're pivoting now, but I actually have just put some feelers out with those particular groups, because I suspect that those services will be pivoting to manage in a different manner right now, given the circumstances. Yeah. Of course, and if there are ones, see, you're in Tennessee, right? Okay, if there are ones I'll give you my card. Of course. That is a good question, and I wish I had a better, more concrete and helpful answer, but I don't, not yet. Yes, and I really I've heard those conversations quite a lot, even, and I hope Bryn doesn't mind me saying this, even at the Don't Forget the Pets workshop that I was in. It didn't come up in the workshop itself, but it came up we had, I don't know how many different organizations in the room, and multiple people brought that up to me specifically, and I think those conversations are happening a lot in the animal welfare community right now.
Oh, yeah. Hi. I just wanted to confirm, I think you had mentioned the resources that you have for like vet offices and handouts and things like that are things that we can just kind of take and use. And
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
I just wanted to make sure there's no like plagiarizing.
No, I very much appreciate that, but the whole point of them is, we want people to use them if they need them, and so please take them, make them your own, do whatever you need to do. Thank you for checking, though.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
That was amazing.